Hello and welcome to my channel. Vice Rhino here, and joining me this evening is very special guest, got P. Andrew Torres. Andrew, hello.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me.
All right, so if you're not familiar, Andrew here is, he's got two podcasts. He's the host of two podcasts, the Opening Arguments podcast and the Clean Up on Aisle 45. Opening Arguments is kind of like break down legal stuff, legal cases, talk about current events from a legal perspective. Clean Up on Aisle 45 is cleaning up after 45. And
It's a big lift, I'm telling
it's a big lift. It's been going since Inauguration Day, I believe. And he's also the legal counsel for the Puzzle in a Thunderstorm podcast. So that's probably more than a full-time job, just them, with keeping Eli in check.
it can be, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we got people. Let's see, law talking guy.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Jay Rathage.
if you are a regular viewer of my streams, you will know that I regularly reference opening arguments when I'm talking about like anything legal related. There's always something. There always seems to be something in your show that's like nobody in the media is talking about this, and then I'll like find a news article that's not talking about it and be like, and I heard on opening arguments that.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, the idea was, again, we started opening arguments in August of 2016. Kind of expected a slightly different world than the one we got. And the idea was to take stories in the news, didn't have to necessarily be political, that had a legal component to them and sort of break them down for a non-legal audience, make it not scary.
Yeah.
The best comparison to think about in terms of like long-form journalism is, um, think about like Last Week Tonight, right?
Yeah.
John Oliver's stuff. My partner Thomas Smith is a comedian, long-standing podcaster, right? So the idea was have some humor, take on stories that are out there, and then kind of give the full context. Then we elected a criminally insane game show host as president, and things took a rather turn for the worse. So I know we have at least one MAGA hat wearing idiot in your audience at the beginning who's like, will Trump face consequences? No, because he hasn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Let me be really clear about this, okay? Donald Trump is not just a criminal. He is easily the most corrupt president we've ever had. He runs circles around Richard Nixon. He started criming during the election, right?
Yeah.
That was, among other things, disguising a $300,000 payoff to porn actress Stormy Daniels, that we broke and discussed all those documents on opening arguments. His transition team committed numerous crimes, including violations of the Hatch Act and others during the transition, which necessitated the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel. On day one, he violated the Anti-Nepotism Act, which was passed by Republicans, right? Like that was, they didn't want, Bobby Kennedy ever being Attorney General again. And so the Anti-Nepotism Act says you can't, not only can you not hire, you can't recommend or give a job evaluation for a family member. And it goes down to second cousin level. And Trump was just like, I want Jared Kushner, on as a senior White House advisor.
He's not a family member. He's an in-law.
No, it specifically says in-laws in the statute. No, I know you're cracking a joke, but I mean, they thought about this, right? They were like, yeah. You can't get around it by, just having it be an in-law. So, began committing crimes on day one. Routinely violated the emoluments clause of the Constitution by directing foreign officials to stay at his hotels and his golf courses.
Didn't Pence in Ireland stay at a hotel that was like on the complete opposite side of the island in order to stay in a Trump hotel from where he needed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you read volume 2 of the Mueller report, and maybe I'm the only person that's read that. That outlines the 9 specific ways in which Donald Trump obstructed justice in the course of that investigation. So numerous, extensive, serious crimes. And let's be honest, he's going to skate on all of that right? He will never face reckoning for any of those crimes. So we're here today to talk about, is he ever going to face consequences for anything? And spoiler alert, like, I think he will. I have some optimism
but
here.
Before we get into that,
that's my intro. Yeah.
There we go. Before we get into
Sorry.
that, no, that's quite all right. I could, I was scared for a second there. You're going to like detail every single scandal that he was in. Like, we're going to be here for years.
I'll let you, chime back in 3 hours. But I've commandeered the stream.
No, that's quite all right. Quite all right. I get distracted easily. Like, for instance, Gregorius Daniel is, Danelli is saying, "Great, now I'm craving a Terry's chocolate orange." Those things are fucking fantastic. I love them. And
they are whack and unwrap.
Oh yes, love it. Anyway, so what we're doing here tonight is we're trying to raise money for Project Share Niagara, which is a local food bank in my area. It's not just a food bank though. So they do a food bank, and they have I think 17 other programs where they do things like they'll help people out with their bills that they're behind on. They have a Christmas program where they'll buy like a Christmas dinner and some presents for the kids for underprivileged families, and they do a really good job serving our area. And every year in November we've been doing fundraising for them. If you were around last year, you might remember my wife died in the middle of the fundraising campaign. So I've kind of rebranded it to be in memory of her. So this is the fundraiser in memory of Mrs. Rhino. Last year we raised $40,000. It was a bit extraordinary circumstances, so I don't quite think we're gonna hit that level again this year. I'd be happy to surpass it. But actually, no. You know what? I think we can hit 40,000 because you know what? My kids. Every time last year I told them that somebody donated, it made them happy. So if you want my children to be happy, donate money to Project Share. If you hate my kids, you cannot donate to Project Share. But if you want my kids to be happy, you got to donate to a good cause. I've got a bot spamming the link in the chat. It's just a forward link, and it's not got an SSL certificate, so you might get a warning when you click on the link. But when you get to Project Share's actual site, it is SSL. So don't worry about that. And always check for the lock when you're doing anything financial online in the URL bar. Anyway, so let's start off talking about some why you think Donald Trump might face some consequences, and then we can finish up with some Q&A.
Yeah, and I love, feel free to move ahead because...
Sorry, I forgot to mention, I will be matching the first $500 of donations, and I believe you said you were going to match something as well?
I'm going to do the same thing. So let's go ahead. Happy to chip in and match the first $500.
So if we can get to $1,000 tonight, it'll be $2,000 by the end of the night. So let's go for it. That's 2/10 of the way to the goal. So, anyways, I've distracted.
Yeah. No, totally fine. So, what I was going to say is, at any point, feel free to say, let's move on, let's take a break, because interacting with people is a lot more fun, right? I mean, I do my show twice a week, so you can put me on autopilot, and I can tell you about what Trump has done wrong. That's not hard. What I love to do is talk to folks. So, right, we're a skeptic community. I started off and I detailed the dozens of crimes that Trump has committed for which he skated. And so I've already seen people in the chat link that are like, yeah, laws don't apply to the rich and powerful in this country. That's not true.
I've got,
it is.
Donald Trump had to be Donald Trump his entire life. He's suffered enough.
That's a good one. I like that. No, he has not. Actually, I love that as sort of a segue to I don't know what you would consider a victory. Here's what I would consider a victory. This is what I'm angling for. I want Donald Trump to be convicted of at least one felony and to serve at least one day in a federal penitentiary or state. I'm happy, right? In prison, so that picture of him in an orange jumpsuit, right, is indelibly stamped in the history books for life. And my grandkids and great-grandkids learn that he was a crook, that he was a criminal I dare say mastermind, but right, he was the worst president we've ever had that committed active crimes while as president of the United States, and we can move towards moving on from this period in American history. So that's my goal, and I am, noted optimist, but I think that there are reasons to believe we get there. So let me tackle the skeptics first.
Okay.
Right. The skeptics are going to just say what I said, right?
Yeah.
Crimes don't matter if
he's
you're
rich and powerful. Yeah.
Right. Not true, right? So perfect example of this, right, is, and this is collateral, but what just happened with Steve Bannon, right?
Yeah.
The way in which the universe is different when you're no longer holding the levers of power. Because when Trump was president, he just told all of his creditors, like, yeah, you get a subpoena, throw that shit in the trash. Oh, I'm sorry, can I swear on the live stream?
Fucking A, yeah, of course.
Okay, good. Sorry. I don't want to get you, mislabeled or anyway. Right, it was just throw those subpoenas away, obstruct, delay. You don't have to do anything. If you do, I'll wrangle it so you're not prosecuted. If you are, by some crazy happenstance, I'll pardon you. It's all going to be fine. The rules have changed when you don't control the Department of Justice anymore. And Steve Bannon thought the old system was in place. The January 6th committee made a referral to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice, within 2 weeks, charged him with the only crime that applies to failure to respond to a congressional subpoena. It's 2 U.S.C. 192.
Yeah.
It carries you can impose probation, right? It's a 0 to 6 month offense under the federal sentencing guidelines. So the statute says it carries a maximum of a year, but it's almost impossible to get a year based on how that works, right? And he got 4 months, right? Like, from a Trump appointed judge. So if you're thinking,
I thought when I heard 4 months, I was like, that doesn't seem like a lot. That's a slap on the wrist. But considering the maximum is a year, that's actually
and the functional maximum is 6.
Yeah, and so from a Trump appointed judge, you got like 40% of the maximum allowable, and I guess like 80% of the practical max. So
yeah. So, does that seem like a lot of? It doesn't seem like a lot of consequences. And if you want to argue the system treats the rich and powerful equal to the poor and black, like, no, it most certainly does not. And that's part of what I've been working my life to address those disparities. But don't give up hope in a system of the rule of law and say that it's the same as having it, because it isn't. Okay. And now let's talk about Trump. Again, things stick in your mind when they seem to fit that pattern, right? So, we all took notice when Judge Eileen Cannon, Federalist Society weirdo, intervened and set up this like crazy special master overseeing the documents in what I call the Mar-a-Lago cases.
Okay,
right?
Can I just say though that special master just sounds like a BDSM thing. Like, there's no way. Like, what was that on purpose? Did a law guy who had a BDSM kink just be like, "Oh, I could call this special master"? Sorry, I just want to point out somebody just sent a super chat. Super chat's actually because of the way the charity is a very small Canadian one, so they're not registered for the YouTube super chat thing. So I will send that $5. I'll donate $505. But super chats come directly to me. They don't go to the charity. So if you're trying to donate to the charity, don't do it through super chat. But can I get you to drink 3 shots of your choice of liquor for $100 Canadian donation? Yes, but I don't have any liquor in the house. So if you donate $100 now, I will drink 3 shots of whatever liquor on the next stream, and it'll probably be scotch.
I will do it for you.
There we go.
I have opening arguments brand scotch right here.
Really?
Well, my mom had this bottle made for Christmas, which is super cool, and then I poured a bottle of scotch in.
That is amazing.
But, I love my parents, and they're super supportive of the show, and they stopped asking me wait, you went to Harvard Law School and you do what now? So a big fan. So I will give you a good healthy glug for your $100 Canadian, which is almost $100 in real money, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Anna the Elephant gave $5 US in super chat, so I imagine that's 100 US that'll be donated. That one stuff says do a marijuana.
If you know,
I've heard the story. I know where you're going.
so my glass, you can't quite see it. My glass, Heather Loveridge made this for me. She etched it in there, and it says "Precious Little Cinnamon Bun."
Yes.
I'm not a marijuana guy. Sorry. So I am a Scotch guy, and
so there is a story on is that one on opening arguments, where you went to the marijuana food place.
People affiliated with the show know. I haven't talked about it on the show, but
Okay.
yeah, no,
Well,
I think we talk about it in
discussed.
one of the like. Yeah, go ahead.
It's been discussed. I forget where.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. Well. So precious.
Here's
little
my
cinnamon.
third. Here's my third.
This is my precious little cinnamon bun time. I've never been stoned. I tried edibles and they did nothing. I mean, it's possible they did something and I didn't notice because my wife tried them at the same time, and she says that they did nothing to her, but there were a few times, like we were hanging out with some friends, and there were a few times in the evening where it's like I could tell her filter was gone. It was like, nope, you need to stop talking now because I know where that's gonna go.
I figured I've had as my Sherpa, Mr. No Illusions on 2 occasions, and if he can't lead me to get stoned, then no one can. The very first time I consumed a variety of marijuana in a variety of ways, and what it made me do was drink a lot of water and then fall asleep. That's not super fun. Uh, then we did the underground pot, which is super. Like I took a ton of photos. I was super cool. It was fun to be there, and like I was really like nervous up front. Like I was, very daintily like eating a little bit of the garlic roll and everything else. And I very famously, like I fell asleep, like I mean snoring. Fell asleep in the front of the cab on the car
Uber,
ride
yeah.
home. We got back to our little shared house, and I was like, I'm going up to bed. You guys enjoy the aftermath, and that was it. So, like I will stick with good old booze. It gets the job done.
Well, so the woman that I'm dating right now, she heard that I had not been stoned, and she offered to get it done for me, and we were supposed to do that last Friday, but then we both have kids, and everybody got sick, and so it's like, okay, I have to take care of kids, you have to take care of kids. Maybe next time, soon. It'll happen soon.
Well, I wish you luck, my friend. I hope it treats you better, or at least differently than it treats me. So.
April Pop says Eli made me do a shot of Malort. That's that Chicago thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I basically, have you ever worked as a bartender?
I sort of.
So you've done like shots of Frenet at night, right? Like
no.
Okay, well.
No, I was the kind of bartender that at the end of the night, I'm going home. I'm not staying around to hang out with you losers.
I have never been a bartender. I have friends, clients who were in that industry, and like doing a shot of Fernet Branca, which is a very bitter Italian aperitif, is kind of a thing. And it's kind of gross to do by itself. And Malort is like that times a million, right? It's super bitter. It kind of has an original NyQuil kind of taste to it. Yeah. I have family in Chicago, so hence my my familiarity with Malort. I am sorry, April, I was not there. I made April do a shot of tequila when we were at the last Puzzle Live show. So I think in Toronto. So she just has a do shots kind of face. So let me pick that last thread up just for a second, which is in addition to bad stuff is happening to other people, bad stuff is happening to Trump, and it's happening to Trump from areas that you don't expect it, right? And that began with January of this year, right? Donald Trump applied to the Supreme Court on, what is called the shadow docket, what is now colloquially referred to as the shadow docket administratively, and wanted a declaration that if he said previous records were executive privilege, that that counts for all time, no matter what Joe Biden says. And the Supreme Court 8-1 was like, yeah, no, it doesn't. That's a clever view, but no. And it really has established the pattern of, yes, Clarence Thomas is married to an insurrectionist, and so he has to sleep on the couch if he accidentally does the right thing. But none of the rest of the judges, of the Supreme Court justices, let's be real, I call them howler monkeys, right? They are far right conservative activist monsters, but they're not beholden to Donald Trump because, oh, look, lifetime tenure and you're not the president. So they don't care about helping him out personally. They care about ending reproductive rights in this country. They care about advancing a monstrous agenda, but they're not going to change the law to help Trump personally, and they haven't again and again, including most recently today, denying a last minute stupid request by Lindsey Graham not to have to talk to the Fulton County grand jury that is impaneled in Georgia. And so,
I was thinking of the. I thought didn't he win the thing for the, what's it called? Didn't he win the one for the congressional subpoena? Wasn't there two with him?
So I'm not entirely certain, but you had a recent decision that threw out, for lack of standing, the Meadows versus Pelosi, if that's what you're thinking about. But that's a
no. I probably just heard the same story told in two slightly different ways.
Yeah.
And
look, it continues, right? That Trump is. It stands out when he wins in the courts because he's not. Because he's not the president anymore, and you don't have Bill Barr as Attorney General, and you don't have his cronies up and down the executive branch.
Well, also it stands out more when he wins because he usually loses in court. He's got a very long history of everything he brings to the court since he lost the election has lost pretty much.
Yeah, the Kraken lawsuit cases were 1/2 for 61. That 1/2 was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court allowed Republican poll watchers to sneeze on people, and that was the only relief they want at any level. And I mean that sincerely, right? Like the local poll watchers were told, "Hey, you got to stand back 25 feet because plague." And they're like, no, we want to get way up in their face. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was like, fine, stand back 6 feet. And that is literally the only relief they have ever won on any of their 61 lawsuits challenging, advancing the big lie, challenging election results.
All right, so I gotta say, Bryn Farmer, is it pronounced Bryn or Brienne? No, Bren probably. Says, I've inadvertently trolled myself as I used a debit card with my dead name, and now I get to keep seeing it in the donation screen. So we need to get a bunch more donations so that it stops scrolling past the dead name there, which I didn't actually know when I set this up that it was going to do the scrolling thing that it's doing. I kind of like it, but we also need more donations so it's not going quite so fast because it's a little bit distracting.
Yeah, absolutely. Get on in there and.
But we're at $535 right now, so that's pretty fucking amazing. So I'm putting in my $500 now, so you're up to $35. We got to make Andrew pay.
That's right.
Got to make my kids happy. Got to make Andrew pay.
So, I don't know if you want to take a couple questions, or you want me to kind of get into the landscape, whatever.
Sure, we can take a pause. We can take a pause and go to some listener questions. So we've got from Patreon, Curtis asks, how far do you think this Supreme Court will erode the separation of church and state, and how blatant will they be in their favoritism of Christianity over other faiths?
It is hard to imagine how much worse it can get. We just had Andrew Seidel on promoting his book, Crusade, American Crusade. That is, I believe, episode 634. So take a listen to that, opening arguments. This is It's a personal hobby horse of mine for two reasons. Number one, because I'm an atheist. And number two, because it really puts to the lie the notion that these conservative justices are in any way originalist or trying to ascertain the intent of the founding fathers, because it is very, very clear from the records of history. Now, mind you, this is a terrible way
they're
to
originalists when it
figure out what
suits
the
their
law is.
agenda.
Yeah, like it is. This is a terrible way to try and figure out what the law means. But if you were to do so, and if you were to look at the collective writings of those who contributed to writing the First Amendment, you would wind up with 97-3, in terms of the overall evidence, something in favor of the government cannot give a dime directly to a church or indirectly in such a way that winds up in church coffers. And that position has not been the law in this country for 100 years, right? Like what we wound up with, the workable rule that this Supreme Court has eroded, and that would be a dream to go back to, was the Lemon test, right? From Lemon versus Kurtzman, which is a 3-part test, which says that something violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment if, number one, it has as its primary effect to aid or inhibit religion. Right?
Yeah.
Number two, it has as its primary purpose to aid or inhibit religion. Or number three, and this is the most criticized part, but again, it worked for 50 years, if it excessively entangled government with religion.
Well,
and that's
it was one of those compromises that nobody liked, which is how you know it's a good compromise, right?
Exactly right. Just like, by the way,
I might have listened to that episode.
Yeah. But exactly like Roe v. Wade, right? And Roe v. Wade drew a ton of critics unwilling to defend it. It absolutely was, I think, the correct framework.
Well,
and
the Southern Baptist Convention supported Roe versus Wade when it happened.
It was not until I would love, and again, a little bit outside of my area, but the pioneering in an evil way work of Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority and Pat Robertson to sort of successfully hijack the conservative wing of the Republican Party. The anecdote I always tell is, in 2012, Franklin Graham scrubbed all of the Graham affiliate websites, which are pretty heavily trafficked Christian websites, of the cult Mormonism section that were on there. They're probably back up now, right? But there was no surer sign that evangelicalism in America today is a political movement, not a religion, than they were like, what? We've always loved Mormons. Go vote Mitt Romney. Okay, all right, I see. So,
yeah. So now to swing it back around to originalism. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're actually an originalist, wouldn't that pretty much definitionally make you not an originalist? Because the original intent was, we know that things are going to change, and so we're building in mechanisms to allow for change.
This is the primary objection, philosophical objection to originalism, and you have stated it very, very concisely and very well. And that is, as you read the Bill of Rights, you discover terms that cannot be interpreted literally, cannot be interpreted as anything other than what my jurisprudential mentor Ronald Dworkin would describe as moral imperatives. And that sometimes freaks atheists out when I say that, but so super easy, right? The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be deprived of property without due process of law, right? And I will take an originalist, I'll be like, all right, what's a process? How much of it are you due? Right? You cannot answer that question in a sentence. You cannot answer that question by reference to 1798, right?
Yeah.
You have to answer that in the way that everybody has understood that phrase prior to about 1985, when the project went sort of mainstream. And I'm going to tie it into your field in about 30 seconds. And that is, yeah, of course. What that means is, if the government takes something from you, the more significant the thing they take from you is, the more they have to give you an opportunity to defend that at law, right?
Okay, yeah.
Totally straightforward. That's how everybody understands what the Fifth Amendment means until you arrive at originalism. And the problem is, and this then overlaps with the majority practical reason why originalism is terrible, and that is lawyers aren't historians and the historical record sucks, right? So when you go back to
Are you
try and
sure
figure
lawyers
out,
aren't historians? Because I seem to recall reading some stuff coming down from the Supreme Court that goes into a lot of like the history of Saxony and
right, because what you do is when you're an originalist, this is a spoiler, it enables you to say that there is an objective right answer. And so, therefore, the weight of history over the past 200 years to the contrary is of no force whatsoever. So, I'll give you a perfect example of that. I know you've listened to this episode, but DC versus Heller, the crowning achievement of Antonin Scalia, they took a 50-year-old law that was on the books in Washington, D.C., that prevented you from possessing a handgun within the borders of the District of Columbia. It was something that everybody knew. Everybody, plenty of people didn't like it, but it had worked for 50 years. Nobody thought it was unconstitutional until a bunch of conservative lawyers started writing law reviews articles about it, and then they achieved a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. And the fact that the Supreme Court had never in its history ruled that there was an individual right to own firearms contained in the Second Amendment, despite the cases that had and could have come before it. Never. That 200 years weight of history was easy to just dispose of as, well, right, but it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is, what did the framers think in 1789? And the minute you do that, this is how it ties.
The framers in 1789 thought that gun technology is probably not going to stay the same, so maybe these like single fire muskets aren't going to be the only weapons forever.
Who knows? But the way that it dovetails with your business, right, is that is exactly the same game that evangelical Protestants use with respect to interpreting the Bible, right? Like, it doesn't matter what the church has thought X passage has meant for 2,000 years. They're Catholics.
Absolutely.
What the hell do they know? What matters is what the Lord intended when he inspired the writers to write, John 5:17 or whatever. And what that means is what I think John 5:17.
We were kind of talking about this before we went live, but I've started doing shorts on YouTube and I'll like read fucked up Bible passages, and I'm getting all these people on my back about context. Oh, you took that one out of context. You didn't provide the proper context. And be like, okay, well, first off, I have 60 seconds. How much context can you give in 60 seconds? Like, there's not a lot. You want the context, you go to my videos that are like 45 minutes long. I got plenty of context for you there. But then on the flip side, it's like when the pastor says, turn the other cheek, Jesus said, turn the other cheek in Matthew, I think that one's in 10. I don't know, wherever it is. When Jesus says, turn the other cheek, do you ask him for context for that one? Or do you like that one, so you just leave it
not
alone?
when it supports my opinion. That's right. And so you're left with, and you made that passing reference, but like in the Dobbs decision, it may be the most, I like to think that there will be a time in the near future in which the court reverses Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center, the case that overturned Roe v. Wade, and we can go back and laugh at it, but it's hard to laugh at it now because it's the law of the fucking land, and there's 20 pages
law of your land
in which Samuel Alito walks through, like, well, in 1634 in Aylesbury, like, it was a crime to give a woman a bitter root that would, and you're like, what world are we in which we care about the penalties that were assessed for slipping birch root into a woman's drink 500 years ago? That's where we are as a result of this fiction. And again, Samuel Alito doesn't give a shit what the laws were in 1634 Aylesbury. Like, what he cares about was, I would like to erase the idea that the Constitution contains implied rights, and so therefore I would like to overturn Roe v. Wade because I've been groomed my entire life to do that, and I'm going to write whatever it takes in order to get there, and that's what we were stuck with. So.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. You can, you know what? I'm here all night. I don't know if you got a time constraint, but I've heard your Q&As. We might get to 3 questions today.
I could do a little bit of a lightning round. You got to lay another one on me.
Okay. So I'm gonna skip to Blade Runner, who's a regular on my streams. Donate more money, people. We're almost at Andrew has to pay a full 500.
Yeah.
Blade Runner asks, how much of Eli's personality is just for the show, and how much is the real guy? Now, if I could take a stab at this one, from a few of the Elia tribes I've heard, he sounds like a very intelligent, thoughtful, considerate person. And I actually have a hard time reconciling that with his reputation for misspelling things all the time in everything.
All right. Well, since we're doing this for charity, I will potentially violate attorney-client privilege. I will. So gather on in. This is the good stuff. You donate. We're at 890. So I'm gonna build up to the answer on that part of the question. I want to start with, here are the parts of Eli's personality that are fake, as far as I can tell. Number one is any implication, and this is true among all of the members of Puzzle in a Thunderstorm, any implication that like he's the dumb one, right? Like Eli is the only one of us that's read Proust, right? Like like Eli's incredibly smart, very well read. You don't, right? His mentalism magic like requires a tremendous amount of like research and work. So like he's not dumb. Um, Everything else about his personality is 100% Eli's personality. So I'm going to tell you 2 stories here. And again, we haven't moved that 890 at all. Come on, I'm telling Eli stories
There's
here.
$110 until Andrew has to donate his match.
Yeah, we got 215 people watching in the audience. Like, get on, make a paltry donation. It's okay. You'll show up on the list with $5, but we got to move that noodle a little bit here. So we all went to Skepticon in Australia about, I think, 4 years ago now, and turned it into kind of extended vacation. So which was amazing. We do a company retreat every year that leads up to the pajama party that we do in connection with our Matreon fundraisers. So we spend a lot of time with each other, and Eli in person walking down the street is exactly like Eli on the show, in the sense that you have no idea what he's going to say next. I have never been around somebody who makes me laugh as much as Eli makes me laugh. The specific story I think has been told elsewhere. Good work. Keep going. So sorry, I had it right there. I was distracted by the generous donation. All right, so I'm going to set that one to the side because I'm going to remember it in a second, and I don't want to get
the baby carriage
derailed.
story?
Let me talk. I'm sorry.
The baby carriage story?
Oh no. I will talk about Eli's driving. We go over 1,000. I will tell you an Eli driving story that you may or may not have heard before. Eli's spelling is 100%. Like all of those skits on the show. So if you want to know some background stuff, if there's ever a skit on the show that's like, Andrew made us not do X, that's usually 90% of those are correct, right? Yeah, there's been a thing, and
that's actually that's one of the questions I want to make sure I hit too. Yeah. Remind me to get to that one later.
And if there is a joke about like Eli's spelling on the show, because what we do is we do a shared document, right? And you contribute, so that way everybody can see their jokes in advance. Those are 100% correct. I have
the
no
show
idea.
Is scripted? Their shows are scripted?
Yeah. Good. The best shows are scripted, right? Like that. This is always when people, as a sidebar, but like people will ask me like, hey, I'd like to do a podcast too. And the number one thing I will say is write your stuff out, right? Like,
absolutely.
My job is to extemp things for a living in some circumstances, and like I suck at it, and I'm better than you at that, right? Like I'm better than most people, and the baseline is like extreme suck, right? Like so I've gotten myself up to passable, but
each one of
most
my
people,
videos is about a 10-page script.
yeah, right. Of course, that's what makes it quality product. So don't extemp. And by the way, like when I extemp on opening arguments is when I have to wind up doing Andrew was wrong segments, because I'm like, no, I'm 100%, I'm 97% certain it was that, and then the 3% comes up. So jokes about Eli spelling are 100% dead on correct. So,
Didn't he study English?
Yeah, no, he has an MFA from NYU, and has taken multiple English courses over the years. I will tell I was going to tell the airline story, but I think it's going to take too long. I will tell you that my son, who is just off in his freshman year of college, my one and only son, I'm very, very sad about this. I miss him dearly. One of the things he was looking at was the Gallatin School at NYU.
Yeah.
And so I asked Eli to show him around, talk to him about NYU, and show him Manhattan, because I was like, I just think it would be super cool, to be 19 and like live for a couple of years in Manhattan. I think that would be an experience to have, and I wanted my son to, so Eli took him around, and his last pitch to my son, 100% this was true, was, "Hey Alex, one of the things that you may not know is at the Gallatin School, you are graded on, I think it's 24 projects over your 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's your degree. That's how we get out. Each one of those projects is graded by your advisor. Your advisor can be anyone who is faculty at NYU. I am adjunct faculty at NYU. So if you'd like to spend 4 years, smoking weed and jerking off, this would be an outstanding institution for you to attend." And my son was like, I don't think so. But like that was his pitch to my son to go to NYU.
That's amazing.
We have apparently that was what it takes to get me to pay the $500, which I'm very, very happy to do. Got us over our goal, and congratulations on that. Now we're still, way short of the actual goal, but
I will put my $500 in right after the stream, just because I'm doing this with screen capture stuff, and there's a good chance that as soon as I start typing my credit card number, it's gonna like broadcast it to the whole. They're like, oh no, I'm gonna switch to this window now because it's got the same name as the other one.
Well, I will arrange with you offline, but I'm good for the contribution. So, okay. So let's go back to the baseline. How is Donald Trump going to face the consequences? And I can do, by the way, if somebody throws it in the chat or what have you, you have more objections to that specifically kind of go beyond rich people don't face consequences in this country. I'm happy to take that on. I think the evidence is overwhelming to the contrary with respect to Donald Trump right now. It's part of what I feel good about. There are 3 cases that I think are teed up. They are ready to go to the indictment stage, and I think prosecutors have a very, very good chance of winning all 3 of those. The first one I want to talk about, again, Supreme Court ruling today that Lindsey Graham, who went pestering legislators to try and overturn the election results in Georgia, has to testify. Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis has impaneled a special grand jury in Georgia. This is about the Trump-Raffensperger call, right, on January 3rd.
I need you to find me more votes.
I just need you to find me 11,700 votes. Now, this is a state crime. So 2 things. Number one, it means that a Republican president can't pardon Donald Trump for these crimes. On the flip side, it means that Republican Governor Brian Kemp, who is incredibly likely to win re-election, could, but I don't think he wants to. Um, I think it seems very, very clear that Brian Kemp has had enough of Donald Trump shit. He was primaried by a Trumper. He's going to cruise to reelection, and he'll be term limited after that. And so, like, it has no reason to care, no reason uh, to pardon Trump. And again, I kind of don't care, right? Like, remember, yeah, like I'll be outraged if it happens.
Yeah.
But if he's convicted, that's the judgment of history. If he's convicted, one of his, Republican Party, co-conspirators decides to pardon him, I think history will know how to take care of that. So there are two laws that
we'll
work
still
in
get the
common
jumpsuit
here.
picture.
Yep, exactly right. The first is Georgia Code 21-2-562. I'm going to read this to you because it's super short. I'm going to lie over the stuff in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Any person who willfully inserts or permits to be inserted any false figure, false statement, or other fraudulent entry, and then there's like 20 examples, right? But so it is super clear.
I mean,
any false figure.
It sounds pretty sexy so far. I'm not going to lie.
In connection with any primary or election shall be guilty of a felony. Okay. Now you might say, okay, but they didn't actually insert the false figure, and that's where 21-2604, criminal solicitation to commit election fraud. A person commits that offense with intent that the other person engage in conduct constituting a felony under this article, he or she solicits, requests, commands, importunes, or otherwise attempts to cause the other person to engage in such conduct. The Raffensperger call is prima facie evidence of having violated that section 604.
That's 100% clear cut.
Right. The only argument that could be made is one that the statute does not permit you to make, right? And so when I give this to Trumpers, they're like, well, yeah, but what if he believed he won? And the answer to that is found in the Raffensperger call itself and will be corroborated with the evidence that they get from folks like Lindsey Graham.
There's also a lot of stuff from the January 6th committee that's like, no, he knew. He knew.
That's right. But suppose Trump manages to convince a jury, and Trump is never going to testify in this case. He would be a terrible witness. But, suppose they put on, I don't know who's left that could testify on Trump's behalf, right? Like, it certainly wouldn't be Pat Cipollone. He's already flipped. It certainly won't be Eric Hirschman. He's already flipped. It certainly won't be Bill Barr. He's already flipped, right? Like, so. But just imagine that you could put on a witness that was like, no, Trump really believed he won Georgia. You would go, yeah, in the call he says, I won Georgia by 3 million votes. You just need to find me 11,700. And the problem is that's still a number he thinks was false. In other words, right?
Like even if he honestly believed he won, he's still asking for more than he knew he got.
He's asking for a number that is different than a number that he knows to be false, right? So suppose, again, not hard to imagine that Trump doing this either. Suppose Trump won Georgia by two votes, right? And then he's like, yeah, but I really would like it to show that I kicked ass in Georgia and that I won by 1 million votes. So I want you to put in that I won by 1 million votes. Right? That doesn't change the outcome in this hypothetical, but that's still a crime. If you know you won by 2 votes and you say write in that I won by 1 million, then that's crime. And similarly, even if you believe Trump and his cronies that he believed he won Georgia by more than 11,000 votes, and he said, just find me the 11,000, just find me enough to change the outcome. And that's a crime. It's crystal clear. And as you are correct in pointing out, we just got a brand new tranche of documents, eight more crime fraud exception documents from the chief legal architect of the insurrection, John Eastman, Chapman University professor, the guy who basically wrote the legal quote justification for Mike Pence to just declare electoral votes invalid.
He's such a forgettable person. I always forget like John Eastman. I know that name. I know that. Oh right, he was the Mike Pence can do this guy.
Yeah, and Eastman has responded to like eggs on Twitter that mention him. So I am 100% positive that like he's listened to my show, right? And if he shows up in the comment section here, like he that would not surprise me. He just produced 8 more documents in which Eastman tells some of the other legal co-conspirators behind the January 6th insurrection, including Ken Cheeseborough and Cleta Mitchell. He says, yeah, we can't put another affidavit in front of the verified complaint. We can't have him verify these figures because he knows they're full of shit. And that is December of 2020. So yeah, that is coming to a head. It is a progressive district attorney. Nobody can overrule her. She has impaneled that grand jury. She has been aggressive in subpoenaing witnesses. That there is no doubt in my mind that charges are coming and could come late November, early December from Fulton County, Georgia. So there's your first one.
All right. And then federally?
We can. You want to?
Yeah, you know what?
Palate cleanser? Yeah, or
palate cleanser. So
yeah.
Scott DCS asked, what makes a joke unpodcastable, which is legal trouble if not censored? Specifically for, like, I think they're thinking of giving to Vulgarity for Charity. What would you not recommend they use as insults?
Yep.
I'm more curious about, like, what might be behind those beeps that we hear on the shows.
Here's the touchstone that I give when I'm talking to the guys, and I will pass this on along with my disclaimer, right? You know, don't take legal advice from podcast or hear from YouTube. I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. So, you know, this is just me opining and having fun. And besides, I've been, you know, drinking scotch all night. So how much could you possibly rely on this? Okay, well, I mean, that out of the way.
Are you at Rudy Giuliani levels yet, or?
My favorite thing about the January 6th committee is that they always point out that Rudy Giuliani was both drunk and flatulent, and like I just love that like Liz Cheney is like, oh no, we're going to talk to people about exactly how gross Rudy Giuliani is. Anyway, what you are concerned about is defamation, and in particular, as we go through Vulgarity for Charity, oftentimes the insults that people like to say about people would be defamation per se, right? That is, there are a bunch of different categories, but insinuating that someone has a loathsome disease, for example, insinuating that they are untrustworthy in their business dealings, are things that are defamation per se, and it makes it easier to bring those lawsuits, right? But here's the thing: as a threshold question, a statement has to be capable of being proven true or false, and must be false in order to be a defamatory statement. You will often hear this as truth is a complete defense to defamation. I don't love that formulation, because far more often the case that is an even better defense to defamation is this statement cannot be proven or disproven, right? Andrew Torres is a hack. All right, like, you know, what does that mean, right? Like, if you say, hey, here's an example, right? Andrew Torres steals opening arguments from, you know, other writers on the internet. That's a specific charge that can be proven or disproven. That would be defamation per se. It goes to my business dealings, and I absolutely could sue you over that. But if you say Andrew Torres is a lefty hack and he can't be believed or trusted, I'm stuck with that. That's what opinion means. Now, final bit on the question. People think you can immunize a factual statement by sticking "in my opinion" in front of it. That's not the case. Again, don't take legal advice from a podcast. But when I say, you know, in my opinion, you know, Andrew Torres steals from sources on the internet, well, we know it's your opinion because you're stating it. Okay, that the gravamen of what you're stating is still capable of being.
This is why the news sites use the word alleged so frequently.
Yeah, but again, if you were to take that's because there are journalistic standards between about how you report allegations. So perfect example, Alex Jones trial, right? And again, Alex Jones was defaulted on the question of liability on defamation, but it would not have been a defense for Alex Jones to say, Sandy Hook parents are allegedly crisis actors, right? Like, he could stick the word allegedly in front of all of his shitty statements until the cows come home, and that's also not going to immunize him, right?
Well, I mean, so can I just ask, in that situation, like, I would think I agree with you there. I mean, obviously you're the lawyer. I'm not. Although you went to the same school as Ted Cruz, so I don't know, maybe.
I did, year behind him, so.
But
my good friend Ted Cruz.
So I would think that with Alex Jones, it was a pattern of behavior where he said it all the time. Whereas, like, would it be different? Like, one newspaper is just like, allegedly it was a false flag operation, and then they just never said anything else about it ever again.
So yes and no, right? Like, it let's kind of break that down. The standard from New York Times v. Sullivan, right, is a higher standard when you were talking about a public figure, that is reckless disregard of the truth or knowing falsity. It is called the actual malice standard. There's a negligence standard when you were talking about a non-public figure, right? And so first you would want to figure out, like, what's the standard of defamation. Vulgarity for charity, most of these are people off the street, right? So you're talking about non-public figure, lower standard. So then the question is negligence. And usually, right, if you have acted with sort of due care in if you have done what's appropriate in the circumstances, right? That an ordinary person used the standard of care that was appropriate in those circumstances, then that's not negligent. It becomes negligent, even becomes malicious, if you then get informed of that fact, right? That, hey, you've said, try to come up with an example that is not also embedding defamation here in your video. But right, Andrew Torres is a plagiarist, right? Like, and then I send you a cease and desist that's like, hey man, I'm not a plagiarist and there's no evidence of that, stop saying it. And then you continue to publish that statement, right? At that point you could then say, okay, well now, right, that's negligent, right? All Unless you have sort of superior evidence for that. So so that kind of question of that's one way in which the frequency over time can make a difference. The other way it can make a difference is when you're computing damages, right? Like, so think about, and again, it's a challenge in the Alex Jones case because proving that you have damages is an element of the liability itself. Yeah. And again, he was defaulted. The primary reason why Alex Jones was defaulted was a failure to produce complete discovery records. So Alex Jones's argument was, I was just asking questions about Sandy Hook, and I only mentioned it, less than 0.1% of the time. And so the plaintiff's lawyers asked, when somebody says that, right, they're like, hey, this is just not a thing, and I'm just asking questions. Okay, what we want you to do is turn over your records of every single time you've mentioned Sandy Hook. And what Alex Jones did in response to that was no. Right, refused to do so. So you can't make an affirmative assertion, I never talk about this stuff, and then not give the evidence that could be used to test that assertion. And so the plaintiffs went and dug up on the internet, like did a ton of research, engaged the community, engaged our friends over at Knowledge Fight, and they found 40 hours of Alex Jones talking about Sandy Hook. The Connecticut plaintiffs found another 100 episodes between 2012 and 2016 that mentioned Sandy Hook. And again, Alex Jones broadcasts 4 hours a day every single day, right? So a mention is unlikely to be a 30-second thing. It is very likely to be,
a segment,
a half-hour segment. That's what he does. And so that puts to a lie the argument they were making, right? The argument they were making was, I never talk about this. Well, no. And so they were defaulted because of that failure to produce the evidence that would show that they were lying, right? And so that's just another example of how the frequency of the repetition can play into sort of charges of defamation. But the biggest thing is what makes a statement unpodcastable is when it is a statement of fact that can be proven true or false, that does not contain the evidence associated with that. So last little example on that. Come on, we've been stuck at 10:57 for a while.
Yeah,
Good stuff here.
It's been a bit since the last donation.
The last the last example that I want to give from actual puzzle case is we did a god awful movies on the first time we did we did it on Vax. We've done it on a number of folks who are very, very litigious, and in those cases, like when we say things like Andrew Wakefield is a discredited, censured hack and not a credible scientist, I have made them put in the show notes footnotes, right, for each and every one of those claims. And that's when we'll say at the beginning, like, yeah, we're making a hell of a lot of factual claims in this episode. You want to sue us? Bring it on, right? So
I will be relying on you to represent me should Andrew Wakefield come across this episode.
And we signed no indemnification agreement with me coming on, but I'm sure we'll work something out. It'll be fine.
Damn it. All right. Someone keeps asking me to mention the Onion brief, so can you briefly?
Yeah.
Just briefly. This is completely off topic, but it is fun.
I will refer you. I'm very, very sad about this. I had a big segment on it, and just like stuff kept coming up, and so I had to push back. And now my buddy Devin, Legal Eagle, has done a 20-minute video that covers most of the stuff that I was going to do. I may still do it on the show, but
to be fair, you usually beat him to the punch.
I try to because I'm better than him.
He's very fast, but you are also very fast.
But go check out his video. Super short is there was an unbelievable bullshit case coming out of a Cleveland suburb about a guy on his YouTube page who posted a parody of the police department that included things like they were going to have puzzles and quizzes for if you were on the sex offender registry, and if you scored over a 75, you would get purged from the registry. That they had a new experimental abortion technique they would be trying out on teenagers in the back of the police van. And my personal favorite one, that the department was hiring, but that it was like a minority applicants need not apply, right? Like, so okay, maybe not the funniest thing on earth, very obviously parody. The guy took down his site when the police announced they were doing an investigation into the parody, and so he was criminally charged. And then the question is, could he then ultimately acquitted on appeal, correctly so. And then the question was, could he sue under Section 1983 the police department for having him serve time in prison for putting up a parody site? And it went all the way up to, I think that's the Sixth Circuit, I forget, but went up to the appellate courts, and the appellate courts were like, no, this is the right balance. He can't recover for the violation of his constitutional rights for being arrested for parodying the police department. That is now pending on a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court may or may not take this case. I hope they do. I mean, you can't let it stand, right? I mean, it's not a great Supreme Court, but you can't let it stand. And the Onion filed a magnificent brief that is correct on the law. And the major point is the standard that the Sixth Circuit attempted to apply is a standard that says, you have to flag, this is a parody, and the Onion was like, it's not funny when you do that. and their brief is hysterical. So read the brief, go watch the Legal Eagle video. I might also do it on OA.
Now, before we get back to the main topic, we've got someone in the chat.
That still did not move the noodle at all. Come on.
No, it didn't.
Throw in $5. Throw in a buck. Doesn't matter.
So we got someone in the chat says, "Love you, dude. You're literally one of the reasons I realized I'm an atheist." Thank you very much, and I'm glad to have helped. Then follows up with, "But this hard left pandering is too much." So apparently, wanting there to be consequences for criminals and discussing what kind of jokes are illegal is hard left pandering.
I don't know. It is. I mean,
we are both left. But
sure, because
this ain't
Ithaca 7080, if you're still out there, explain to me why, explain to me the secular reason why I should join up with a Republican Party where the primary agenda of the Republican Party is religious bigotry, right? Show me where I'm wrong on that. But I don't, I would love to have two functioning political parties in this country, right? If you get me, a secular, low tax, old 1950s style Eisenhower Republican Party and want to run that against today's Democratic Party, I think that would be a welcome change. But the Republican Party is bought and paid for by evangelical Christianity, and I just don't see.
And oil companies and the NRA.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure, but it still would be right if they if they were to shed all of the religious crap, you would still have the fact that they are bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry. But we could debate that. So.
All right, so back to federal laws that Trump might see some consequences for.
All right, so there are two, right? So let's first talk about the January 6th committee. And I need to explain kind of as an overarching principle, the January 6th committee, right, chaired by Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, is not an arm of the Department of Justice. They are not an inquisitorial body. They can make referrals, and they have made referrals, right? They have referred out for criminal intent, for criminal contempt, Steve Bannon and Mark Meadows, for example, right? But they can't charge anybody with crimes. The January 6th committee's job was to explain, and is to explain to the American public the crime that happened on January 6th.
Yep.
And to make recommendations to Congress about how we can change the laws to make sure that never happens again in the United States. And as such, right, I think a lot of people are looking at it and going well, yeah, they've been doing a lot of stuff for a long time and no criminal charges have come about. And I want to tell you that is intentional. And here's why.
That's a good thing. Okay, so just before you go into it, as a layman, my opinion on that is I want this to, I want it to happen right now, but realistically, I want it to take a long time, because when you're charging an ex-president with this kind of crimes, you need to make sure you got all your ducks in a row.
If you shoot at the king, you better not miss. That's exactly right. Okay. And now, that doesn't excuse, right? Larry Lessig came on my show and called out, chicken shit prosecutors, right? Like Alvin Bragg in the New York Attorney General's office, right? Chicken shit prosecutor, right? That deal that he cut with Alan Weisselberg, CFO of the Trump org, is horrible, right? Is toxic, is chicken shit. Okay. But that being said, when you are building the case against Donald Trump and or his allies, you have to build as airtight a case as you possibly can, because a jury of 12 folks, you are going to have people who voted for Trump on that jury, and you need to be able to persuade them after the bulk of the evidence comes in that they can cast a vote, right, for guilty. Now, again, I feel good about that, and the benchmark for that is Paul Manafort was convicted on 10 counts in front of a conservative jury in Virginia. Multiple jurors came out and were like, "Yeah, well, I voted for Donald Trump, but got to do what you got to do." And I believe in juries, and I believe they will follow the evidence where it leads. But yeah, you got to build the strongest case you can, because think about the very worst scenario, which is you bring charges against Donald Trump and he's acquitted. Are you kidding me? That would be the antithesis of what I want. The judgment of history would be, oh, well, guess
That would
jury
be
of our peers
terrible
found
for
not a
anyone
crime.
who opposes the stuff that Trump does.
Yeah, it would be awful. So, yeah,
Just got to
button
point
up your
out
case.
the donations now end in 69, so nice.
Nice. um, so, button it up, but don't be chicken shit. And the second aspect, right, in terms of delay here, this is really critical to understand. And I think if you're not a lawyer, it just wouldn't occur to you. The January 6th committee has no duty to be fair to Donald Trump. Okay, their job is to make a public pronouncement about what happened.
Yeah.
And specifically here, I'm talking about a case called Brady versus Maryland. If you bring a criminal case against someone, then the prosecutors have an obligation. It is a legal obligation. It can result in the dismissal of the case if you don't do it, to turn over all exculpatory or potentially exculpatory evidence to the other side. Right. So if I'm a prosecutor and I interview somebody and they say X, and then I say that seems to incriminate someone, and then I do a follow-up interview and they're like, well, I don't know how much I believe X anymore, right? I kind of think it might also be not X. I have to turn over that contradictory statement to the other side.
Yeah.
They can then use that to impeach that witness if I put them on the stand. So what you do not want to do is have a prosecutor interviewing the same witnesses at the time that they're testifying publicly on TV. Right?
Yeah.
You want them to testify first, the January 6th committee to finish its job, and then you can lock them in. Right?
Yeah.
But if they're doing it simultaneously, they're going before a grand jury and they're on television, then the prosecutor needs to determine, is there a potential conflict here that I have to alert the other side about and give information to Donald Trump's defense team? So it was never going to be the case. Okay, I just want to be as crystal clear as possible. There is not a lawyer in the country who would have brought criminal charges against Donald Trump in connection with the January 6th insurrection while the January 6th committee was still doing its job. So when they're done, I believe the DOJ will indict. Okay, and I think here there are 3 laws. I think they will indict on at least 2 of these. And again, I'm going to read these to you, and I hope they sound like music to your ears because they sound pretty good to me, right? So 18 U.S.C. 371 says, if 2 or more persons conspire to commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States, and 1 or more persons do any act to affect the object of the conspiracy, each shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. That's it. What is the defrauding of the United States here? That is defrauding the United States out of certifying the electors, right?
Yeah.
And were there affirmative steps taken? Yep. Were there agreement? Yep. Like, this seems like pretty clear knockdown. Like, yeah, you attempted to defraud the United States.
Yep.
Next one, 18 U.S.C. section 1512, subsection C2 says, whoever corruptly obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding or attempts to do so shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. So pretty serious felony charge here. Did
but
they
with
corruptly...
with the word corruptly, that's one of the ones that requires intent.
It absolutely does. It requires criminal intent. And the primary defense, right, has been, well, Trump is going to say he believed his own bullshit, right? And that's why you have seen the January 6th committee endeavor. And again, I have seen the documents. I told you there are 8 more today that continue to confirm this. That's why the January 6th committee has spent so much time showing, like, yeah, here are 40 of Trump's closest advisors that have been with him throughout his entire presidency that are all saying this is idiotic. And then here's Rudy Giuliani, drunk and flatulent in the corner, saying the opposite. Come on. You knew, right? And I want to be clear, right? You do not have to have a document. Donald Trump has the I don't send documents. He doesn't send emails.
Yeah.
He's it's a good mafia technique to like make sure that you never leave a paper trail. But juries make judgments.
He was literally leaving a paper trail as he walked around the White House ripping up paper.
That is true. But literally, right? Like juries make judgments about intent without that documentation all the time. This is the Beavis and Butthead, like I was going to exchange goods and services for sexual favors, right? Like it is required, right? You must with intent, right, to be guilty of solicitation of prostitution. That there is never the time in which the procurer of said services leans out and is like, I would like to exchange goods and services in exchange for sexual favor. Like, but juries infer that, right?
Yeah.
And they can and will infer that Donald Trump was not serious when he claimed that this was all part of his legal rights. Having his closest lawyers, again, John Eastman, conceded, right, and they've read this testimony in the open hearings that Mike Pence's counsel confronted him and said, hey man, this argument is nonsense. And Eastman's reply was, well, we might get Thomas. Right? And then Pence's lawyer, this is Greg Jacobs, said, and then after about a half an hour, he conceded he would not even get Clarence Thomas to sign on to their theory. So
if it's bad enough that Clarence
corrupt.
Thomas isn't going to sign it, then
right. So you do have to prove that corruptly. It's why you want to button up the case, but this seems like a pretty good charge to me. The last one, and again, this is the hardest one, right, is seditious conspiracy. Two things to know about this, right? Number one, it is rarely charged. Number two, this Department of Justice, Merrick Garland's DOJ, has charged Stuart Rhodes, the head of the Oath Keepers, the head of the Proud Boys, with seditious conspiracy. And I think that there's a clear reason why you do that, right? You want some practice litigating this very infrequently charged criminal offense. It's 18 U.S.C. 2384, and it says if two or more persons conspire, and I'm omitting some stuff in the middle, but if two or more persons conspire by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, they shall each be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. What did they prevent, hinder, or
like
delay?
January 6th.
Yeah, the Electoral Count Act, right? They affirmatively did delay it by, 6 hours while we had to clear out the Capitol.
Yeah.
The linchpin here, the weakness, is the by force argument, right? And that is why the January 6th committee spent so much time establishing the lines of communication between Donald Trump and the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, does by force mean a different thing in the law than it does to normal people? Because I'd say that January 6th was you got to connect Trump to that force, but...
That's right. That is the... With the public documents that we've seen, that's the biggest weakness, right? Could you infer it? Sure, you could infer it. But if I were Trump's lawyers, I would get up there and say, look, Donald Trump is a demagogue. Donald Trump is persuasive. And I'm sorry that, these, idiots decided to take it too far. But, Trump never said, I want you to come out, I want you to bring your guns, and I want you to storm the Capitol, and I want you to kill Mike Pence and kill Nancy Pelosi. Now the counter argument is he didn't try real hard to stop them when they communicated that was happening. And again, but you need to think of both ends of that, right? You need to think about what's a prosecutor going to be thinking here, and the prosecutor's going to go, I'm connecting up the force, unless there was no smoking gun that connects up the force. That we've seen publicly. Do I think that's probably in the Roger Stone documents? I think it probably is, right? Because unlike Trump, Roger Stone doesn't shut the fuck up, right? Roger Stone leaves paper trails wherever he goes.
And there's that unhinged video of him yelling in the car. And
so that's how I would make the federal case on January 6th. And of course, there's still the third one we'll talk about at the end, which are the Mar-a-Lago, right? The refusal to
before we get into that
sensitive docs. But
since we're at a break, Silver Harlow sent a super chat. I think that was meant to go to the thing, so I'll now put in $510. So just a reminder to the audience, super chats go to me because it's not set up through YouTube because they're just a little tiny charity. So it's vicerhino.com/donate is where you can donate. There should be a link in the chat not too far away from where you are. There is a link in the description as well. But Silver Harlow asks, can you analyze the statement the Republican Party is bought and paid for by evangelicals in light of your earlier explanation of defamation? I do know how to talk.
Assuming that that's a sincere request, let's do that. So first, can you defame an organization or an institution? You can if it is a collection that is instantly recognizable and transferable down to individual people. So if I say the Enron board of directors are crooks, right? And there was one guy who's not a crook on the Enron board of directors, he could absolutely sue me in defamation for that statement, right? The Republican Party does not identifiably defame anybody. So I could say whatever the hell I want about the Republican Party. Let's kind of start that off as kind of proposition one. But let's assume that, you're a member of the Republican Party and now you're a little bit butthurt because I've said you're bought and paid for by evangelicals. Then the question would be, is that itself a statement that is capable of being proven true or false? And my second argument would be, no, we know what bought and paid for means, right? Yeah. Not the least of which is when we juxtapose with the statement made immediately after, also bought and paid for by ExxonMobil, right? So we know that does not mean a literal statement that is capable of being true or false. It is a statement about where their loyalties lie.
Yeah, it's an observation that a lot of their money comes from the right-wing evangelicals and oil companies and whatever else we said they got. NRA.
Indeed. And then that goes to the third point, which is, and by the way, assuming we would pass through all of that, obviously large chunks of the Republican Party are public officials. Would it pass the muster of New York Times v. Sullivan for me to demonstrate the underlying facts? Like that would be trivially easy to do. So at every level, that argument against, hey, maybe I shouldn't have said that would be false, which is part of why I was super comfortable saying it. So there we go.
All right.
Thanks for the donation.
That actually reminds me of a question I was going to ask earlier when we were talking about jokes that are legal and illegal to make. So with regards to, I think I was thinking of it in context with regards to vulgarity for charity, but is there a certain amount of protection with that in the I don't know if this is the official term, but I think of it as the Family Guy defense, where I don't know if you know the story, but when they were creating Family Guy, they went to their legal counsel and was like, okay, can we make this joke about this company? And they were fully expecting to get a no because it was pretty clear-cut defamation or whatever it would be against a company. And but the lawyers actually can do that, but you can't single that company out. You have to do it to everybody. So make a bunch more jokes. And so that's how Family Guy became that thing where now they poke fun at everything they can think of.
So here's how I would parse it. I thought you were going in a slightly different direction first. I think there are a couple of principles that are there. The first is if the surrounding context makes it clear that no person could take the statement you've made seriously at face value, then you're off the hook for defamation. And the leading case there is Falwell versus Flint, right? That's the People versus Larry Flint case, which stems from a parodic ad for the liqueur Campari. And so in the late 1970s, Campari was running ads in various magazines that were tell us about your first time, right? And again, this was 1978, so this is what counts as risque, right? And so the idea was you would talk, and they would say like, well, I was a little nervous at first, but then, right? And the idea was you were talking about your first time drinking Campari, which is a bitter aperitif, but it had these overtones, and they would interview, predominantly women to say, right? So Hustler did Campari talks to Jerry Falwell about his first time, and that would be that his first time having sexual intercourse was with his mother in an outhouse after they had kicked out the goat. Uh, and so the Supreme Court ruled no person could conceivably view that as making a factual claim about Jerry Falwell's sexual life. It was very obviously parody. Despite the fact that we were talking about this pre-show, despite the fact, oh no, we were talking. Sorry, it's been what, 2 hours now?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half, yeah. So we were talking about this in connection with the Onion brief. It was not labeled as parody; it was labeled as if it was a Campari ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was, and that was funny, right? It was a good joke, and the Supreme Court was like, yeah, no one could possibly take this seriously. So certainly, and this kind of ties it all back for the first part. One of the things I will often tell the puzzle guys is, oh yeah, make that joke, but make it more outrageous.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more outrageous it is, the more you can say, no one would take seriously that, Eli Bosnick desires to have necrophiliac intercourse with Phyllis Schlafly, right? Like, and so I'm pretty comfortable that like the estate of Phyllis Schlafly is not going to sue Puzzle in a Thunderstorm LLC. So there is some of that that goes into it.
Ray Oshima says, "Hey, I believed it ruined my sex life for 10 years." Now there is a delay on the stream, so that might not be about the necrophilia thing. That might be about the Campari thing. but the timing on that was delightful.
That's pretty good. So I think that answers the question. And Family Guy obviously does that, where they've said like outrageous things about individuals that I think other shows would not say, and I have to tell you, like, I swallow a little bit at that. Like there is a recurring person, if you're a puzzle listener, like whom Eli will just like state as a matter of fact, like she murdered her child, right? I'm like, not true at all, right? Just completely out of nowhere. And I struggle with that a little bit. But yeah. So
there's always something with you, like they'll mention like a list of famous people, and then he'll just like be in the background being like, they fucked a child.
Yeah.
Like, what? And
yep.
Okay.
I listen to my client shows while I'm like working out, like jogging, walking, whatever, and like in my head, every single episode of God Awful Movies, I am composing the introductory paragraph to our motion to dismiss the defamation lawsuit that has been filed against us. So yeah, that's
all right. So now we're getting to Mar-a-Lago.
Yep.
And actually, before we get to Mar-a-Lago, we need more donations. It's been sitting at $13.29 for a while. Woo. So head on over there. You and I are both putting in our $500 matches, so we're at $23.29 right now. But yeah, let's. We're almost a quarter of the way to our goal. Maybe I should up it to $40K.
Are you doing this all month, or?
Yeah, all of November. I think I started this the same year that the puzzle guys started Vulgarity for Charity. So they've done a little bit better than me, but I do all right.
I want to say this, disconnected from the pitch, which again, the pitch is, come on, we've given you, if you're in there are 199 in the stream, so I've lost like 14 people. Sorry about that. I'm verbose.
I'm reading 206, so.
Well, they're coming back. If we've given you $1 worth of free content tonight, so toss in. Thanks to Make Words Do Yoga. I saw that, $36. I love that. Toss in $1. We've given you a couple bucks worth of free content tonight. So let me come back.
And before we get back into that, I do want to remind people again that the super chats are going to me, not to the fundraiser. So now I think I'm up to 530 that I have to put in.
I love. I mean,
I think I'm just gonna, like, whatever I get from super chats here, I'll just add it to my match.
So now, independent of the request for donations, I want to say this, and I want to say this sincerely, because you just inadvertently, I think, illustrated that um, what I love about, we have the Opening Arguments Foundation. We raised a bunch of money for abortion service providers in the immediate aftermath of the
Oh,
Dobbs decision.
the
And
stream is buffering at the moment.
oh,
Oh, we're back. Okay.
could you hear any of that, or?
I could hear it, but I just noticed
But
on
we
my
think
thing
maybe they're
that
not. Okay, so I'll start again. So I just want to talk for a second about this community, because I think you unintentionally just embodied that, and that is, um, we have the Opening Arguments Foundation. We raised a bunch of money in the immediate aftermath of the Dobbs decision for abortion service providers, for boots on the ground that actually escort women across the border, across state lines, through waves of protesters. We gave to 3 separate organizations. Um, and our community was the one that answered the call. Every single time we do that, every time it's November and it's Vulgarity for Charity, or it's Cognitive Dissonance leading the live stream to Save the Senate, or it's just us here and 200 folks raising money for a local charity, to feed people. Our people have responded to that call and have done so selflessly, and in a way that just makes me so proud. It's why neither of my shows have anything to do with atheism, but it's why I come on shows like yours, because I want to be there as a voice for other people who are atheists, and to show that there's nothing to be ashamed of, and that I'm out and I'm proud, and always the community delivers. I want to tell a little bit of a story here, because this actually, like, just broke my heart. When we did our last fundraiser, I get, look, like, I have people who are partners at big law firms, and uh, general counsel at large companies. And so, when I ask for matching donors at the beginning, right, and somebody will be exceptionally generous, I just sort of assume that's where you're coming from, right? And it's great, and I love it, and it takes big donors and small donors. And I had one of them write to me and say, "Hey, just so you know, I was one of the large." Like, she gave $5,000 matching donation, and she was like, "Look, I just cleaned out my savings account because I'd paid off my debts and I could, and it felt like the right thing to do." In a world that's increasingly scary.
yeah.
And so I shouted her out on Twitter, right? And I just said, "Hey, while getting her permission first." I was like, "Hey, this was not, the senior partner at a huge law firm. This was just, an ordinary Jane who cleaned out her bank account to try and help women in areas that need reproductive care." And immediately, right, people started pinging her and saying, "Hey, what's your Venmo, so I can help kick back to you?" And it keeps going. So one of the
Yeah.
guys who kicked back to her said, "I've been unemployed with COVID since the start of 2020, but I want to send you $50 because I love what you did." And then somebody replied to him and said, "Hey, can I buy your groceries this month?" And it was just like, and it wouldn't stop. This was like midnight to 3 a.m. And it just kept going. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me on Twitter. And it just, like, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes of how amazing uh, our community is, in terms of answering the call, and really, you know, doing good, because
Yeah.
there's nobody else, like where there's no organization. I mean, there's some fine overarching organizations, but by and large, we build our communities and we get out there, and I just love it. So, all right, sorry, apologize for monologuing there.
Yeah, no, well, no, I can appreciate that, and I think if I could hypothesize on that, I think it might be because atheists don't have the I give 10% of my money to church, so I'm good there and don't need to think about it. So like human beings are generous, generally speaking.
Yep.
And so when you don't have that blanket I give money to the church and the church helps people thing going on, which most of the time they don't. There was a report that came out where they found that something like 73% of donations to the church went to not programs, and then of the remaining, like a quarter. Well, no, actually, it didn't break it down by percentage, but like one of the programs that they said they were giving to were like worship programs. So it's like new guitars for the worship team. And so when atheists don't have that, it's like, okay, well, I see someone that needs some help. I am able to help. I will help.
This is an entire digression, but it's always my answer on the and again, it doesn't matter what the position is on taxing churches, because there's not a chance in hell that that's going to pass in the next 100 years.
I'd love to tax the churches, but it ain't going to happen.
But the answer that I give that I think that my religious friends typically agree with me is let's have the same level of transparency. Right? The Opening Arguments Foundation is a 501c3. I got to file paperwork with the IRS. I got to show them where the money goes. I got to show them who gets paid. By the way, nobody gets paid out of it. We're all volunteers. But if people were drawing a salary, right, you would have to disclose that. That's what charities do. And if we just had that level of oversight where the mega church had to say, here's what here are the salaries we paid out, here are the vendors we paid out, here's the ratio of donations as they go to actually help folks versus as they go to infrastructure costs, it'd be a much better world.
Yeah. So Silver Harlow clarified that it was a serious question. They're just wondering if they could be in trouble for making similar statements themselves.
Love you, Silver Harlow. So again, don't take legal advice from a podcast. I'm a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. Almost always, if somebody threatens to sue you for defamation on the internet, they're full of shit. So don't worry about it.
Okay, again, back to Mar-a-Lago.
Right? Yeah, so let's finish with Mar-a-Lago. That is the fact that in addition to everything, why stop criming just because you're no longer the president? Apparently, Donald Trump decided to steal everything that wasn't nailed down in dozens of boxes of clearly marked confidential, top secret information.
No, Andrew, it was his underwear. Didn't you see the inventory? Did you see the people talking about that?
I missed that one.
It was one of those instances. There was like a parody article someone wrote, was because like one of the items was like articles of clothing, and someone wrote like a parody tweet or article or something. I forget exactly. It was like, oh well, the FBI spent a lot of time looking through Melania's underwear or whatever, because like those are the articles of clothing that they're guessing. And then a bunch of people thought that that's actually what they took, and so they ran with it and believed it.
Yeah, because the defense that has been mounted here is literally incoherent, right? It has been there were never any documents. The FBI set them up, but we need a special master so that he can get those documents back, which he all declassified anyway. And what are you talking about? So let's break down the multiple levels of nonsense. These are document crimes, but again, these are felonies. 18 U.S.C. 793 E and F carries a 10-year maximum penalty. 18 U.S.C. 2071 carries a 3-year penalty, right? So these are not, this is not a speeding ticket. 793 E and F was the crimes that people wanted to have affixed to Hillary Clinton for using a private email server.
Is that the one that Trump strengthened?
Yeah,
specifically to go after Hillary.
There's a different one incorrect, but yes, right. Like these document crimes did not apply to a situation where the argument was, well, there's insufficient, because remember, this was the actual argument that Republicans made and people used as pretext to not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 was because the documents were being stored on a private server that was more vulnerable to hacking and therefore illustrated willful disregard of the failure to keep a document confidential, even though, right, all of these safeguards were put into place. As opposed to, I grabbed shit and put it in the pool shed at Mar-a-Lago, which now is apparently totally fine.
With a stupid little padlock.
Yeah. So here's that first crime, 793. It says, whoever having unauthorized possession of, access to, or control over any document relating to the national defense, and who willfully retains the same or fails to deliver it to the officer or employee of the United States. Right. So that's the first way in which it's a crime.
Andrew, I noticed that that section, it doesn't say anything about classified documents.
It absolutely does not. It must relate to the national defense. And so even if you believe Donald Trump can declassify documents with the power of his mind retroactively from a golf course, which he cannot, even if he could, it's still a crime to have a document that relates to the national defense and not give it back when you're asked. And the record is so abundantly clear on this, and I love the work that the DOJ has done in describing, hey, so we sent the first NARA asked for the records back, and they were told to go pound sand. So then they referred it to us at the DOJ, and we asked for the records back, and we waited several months, and they gave some back, and then we said, but you haven't given them all back, and they told us to pound sand. So then we got a subpoena, and we issued the subpoena, and Trump's lawyer, Christina Bobb, signed a certification that said, we're giving you back all of the records now that respond to the subpoena. And they gave them one envelope, triple sealed in tape, which, by the way, not a thing you do if the documents are declassified with your brain, but in any event, she signed off and said, I certify on the information provided to me that that's it. We're now giving you absolutely everything. We're done. But that time, the DOJ wasn't just willing to take them at their word. They had simultaneously witnesses and surveillance that said, sure seems like a lot of people are going into the pool shed a lot. Sure looks like people are hauling bankers' boxes around a golf course a lot. And that's what that's when we escalated from subpoena to search warrant, which led to the, quote, raid. Not a raid, by the way, just executing a search warrant. The kind that we do against criminals and suspected criminals every day in this country. Went to a magistrate judge, Bruce Reinhardt. The FBI agent signed a 50-page affidavit.
That was a Trump-appointed judge, was it not?
Yep. And lo and behold, they showed up, and there were 36 more boxes of stuff that hadn't been turned over. So if you think that maybe there's a problem with willfully retains in 793E, and you want to argue, well, Trump and Christina Bobb and everyone around him are just really, really stupid. Okay, they tried real hard, but they just it's easy to miss that shed in the middle of Mar-a-Lago. Then there's 793F, which says whoever having lawful possession or control over any document relating to the national defense, again, regardless of classification, through gross negligence, permits the same to be removed from its proper place or custody, or delivered to anyone in violation of its trust, or to be lost, stolen, abstracted, or destroyed, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. I will tell you, I have read every single case related to sections 18 U.S.C. 793F. There's 230 some of them.
Is this the one where one of the examples was a guy who accidentally brought a classified document on vacation with him and put it in a desk intending to return it?
That is exactly right. Went on a bender in Alaska, put it in a desk, knew it was there, meant to take it back with him, but was so hungover, forgot to get it out of the desk. And the reason that I mentioned that case on opening arguments, the reason that you remember it, ties in the underwear bit, because one of the pieces of evidence that is used in prosecuting 793F cases is commingling, is sticking confidential documents in the middle of non-confidential documents and then just throwing them all in a desk drawer somewhere. So when you saw the FBI, take that photograph that had the like Time magazine and all that other stuff, right? That's why they were doing that. That's why they seized initially Donald Trump's passports, because it was all in the same drawer. They documented, hey, look, like this is the lack of care that is being paid to documents that relate to the national defense. They're shoved in his kitchen drawer along with the backup keys to the minivan and that old Snickers bar and right? Like that's how you prove gross negligence. He so did not care where they were that they were just thrown in with all this other crap, with underwear, with personal garments, whatever. This seems to me not a hard case to make. And 2071 is the same thing. It does not even require it to relate to the national defense. It says whoever unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, or destroys, or attempts to do so with intent to do so, and takes or carries away any record, document, or other thing that belongs to the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. And the Presidential Records Act, again, I guess this is sort of the last ditch argument that Trump has tried to use in his favor of well, they're really my stuff. Like, Presidential Records Act is super duper clear. Anything the president creates that potentially relates to his official job duties is a presidential record and belongs to the American people, and custody of that and responsibility for enforcement. The law uses the word shall, okay? Shall transfer to the National Archives and Records Administration upon the second that the president leaves office.
Yes.
Right? So the moment he's gone, those documents, custody belongs to NARA. The documents belong to us. You don't get to keep them because you're sentimental about the cool stuff Kim Jong-un said about you.
Yeah, that right? Doesn't that include souvenirs and crap too? Things that were given to him?
100%. And the way in which you work around that, right? That the things for which Trump has lashed out on, truth.clownfart. Whatever the hell that is, right? Are like he said, well, Obama put all those in Chicago. Not true. Barack Obama complied with the Presidential Records Act, just like George W. Bush complied with the Presidential Records Act.
Yeah.
You can work with the National Archives. They will, and they said, okay, look, we're going to set up a facility in Chicago. We're still in charge of it. We're still in charge of the access, but in Chicago, it's where you want to build your presidential library. We get it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, are there ways to deal with the ceremonial hat that you got from, the president of Burundi? Absolutely. Right? Donald Trump did none of those things. These are not minor crimes, right? I am assuming that, that they just relate to the national defense, and this was not part of a larger scheme to sell military secrets to our geostrategic enemies. I'm assuming that that's the case because I don't even want to believe that about Donald Trump. If that were the case, he should be charged with treason, right? And by the way, right, these are treason statutes, right? But he should certainly be charged with seditious conspiracy related to that. You do not need to establish that. You may infer he kept them for good reasons, bad reasons, whatever reasons. You don't get to, and we do not, because the DOJ. I guess is kind of the way I would pull this all together. Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, he has come out and said, we speak through our court filings, and that's it. And that has been the case. So we don't know what they know about these documents. But here's what we do know. We know they have been litigating this unbelievably heavily.
Mm-hmm.
You don't litigate a case this hard. You don't fight this hard against their efforts to delay and win. By the way, they've won, despite Eileen Cannon, Federalist Society weirdo, unless you're planning to bring charges. So these are three. Let's summarize all of that. There's a sitting grand jury in Fulton County and there are 2 federal grand juries, one in connection with the January 6th insurrection, and one in connection with the Mar-a-Lago documents. Those grand juries are empaneled. They are sitting, and a grand jury's job is to hand down indictments. Okay,
Yeah.
so my belief is that that Donald Trump is going to be indicted. He's not going to be indicted in the next week because of DOJ policy, but he may not be indicted this year. But if it goes much beyond January, I'd be surprised. I think those indictments are imminent.
All right. I'll be looking forward to the Andrew was right segment on that, and hoping to avoid the Andrew was wrong segment.
Me too, brother.
So I'm just going to finish up with the 2 questions, one of which, depending on how you want to handle this one, it could take a while. And the other one, I probably should have asked first, and depending on how you answer, I should have just hung up. So Bat asks, what are your thoughts on the legalization of polyamorous marriage? Now, I will start this off by saying that personally, polyamory, like, that's fine if that's a relationship dynamic that works for you. You do you. But from a legal standpoint, I could see how that would make certain things like estate law and like certain other spousal rights and things. I could see how that could make it a bit more complicated. Not that that's an argument against doing it, because there's plenty of complicated legal crap to begin with. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so I am also on team you do you, and I guess what I would say with respect to the poly community and the folks who are asking that question, if you want to be an optimist, on team optimist prime, that maybe things would change, then I would say take a look at the status of marijuana legalization and acceptance in society, and how that's changed in one generation, right? Like when I went to law school, the idea that we would have essentially like nationwide decriminalization of marijuana was unthinkable, right? 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. But nevertheless, right? Like that's one generation in which, we've gone from it being, a scary thing that's Schedule 1 controlled substance to it being a thing that's legal in, I don't even know how many, right? 20 states, basically never enforced, and that you've got, Biden's amnesty order, and within the next couple of years, again, despite the confusion, right? Like it's still a controlled, dangerous substance, Schedule 1. There's still like interlocking, it's still hard for growers to bank and that sort of thing. But there's a sea change in an area that created a lot of confusion with a lot of interlocking laws. You are correct that changing explicitly permitting poly marriages and relationships would be complicated in a way that recognizing marriage equality was not, right? Because marriage equality is still bilateral, right? Like, and the law is really good with understanding a 2-person contract. When you move from a 2-person contract to a 3-person contract, you add in complexity. So I'm with you. I think it's going to be a challenge. But if you want to be an optimist, that would be the model that I would look at as to how laws can change really, really quickly. And like, I'm a little bit older than you, but like, anybody under the age of 20, right, like truly does not give a shit, right? Like there is just no approbation attached to that whatsoever. And I can't think that, I mean, maybe who knows? Maybe they'll all become, it might be hidebound conservatives by the time they're 40, but it doesn't seem like it.
Now, if I could just address something that just happened in the chat, this person that's kind of been arguing all night, Ithaca 7080, sent a message.
Did they respond to any of the challenges I offered?
I haven't been able to see the whole thing. They've been arguing with other people, but I did just put them in a timeout for 300 seconds and delete a couple messages. I'd just like to address why I did that. It was because they personally attacked my wife, my dead wife.
That's gross.
So yeah, no, I'm not accepting that. So yeah, I think it was when we started talking about polyamory, they said, oh, your wife would be disappointed in you. It's like, no, she wouldn't. You don't know her. I did. I've had this opinion for longer than she's been dead, and she knew it. But also, you know, if you want my wife to not be disappointed, donate to the charity.
I appreciate the pivot there. I'm really sorry that happened. And that's just, you know.
Yeah, no, I was like, I tolerate a lot, but like, I'm not going to put up with personal attacks against my deceased wife. Like, okay, so anyway, final question of the evening. This is the one that could make or break whether my audience decides to go check out your shows or not. Toilet paper, over or under?
I mean, front to back. I guess that's. I don't.
No, this isn't wiping. This isn't wiping.
Oh,
this is how do you hang it?
Yeah. No, you hang it so that it is over, right?
Yeah.
Not under on the back. Are you a monster? No, it's over.
Yeah, you don't want to wipe it against the wall that's got dust and stuff on it before you. Yeah. I mean, the real answer here is get a bidet. You still need toilet paper to dry, but I can hear my daughter's in the other room. I just heard a little voice go, "You still need toilet paper."
I just spent a couple of weeks in Europe, so I can confirm that bidets are indeed like delightful and the proper proper decision.
I have one. Unfortunately, the way my bathroom is set up, it is nowhere, like the toilet is nowhere near an electrical outlet, so I can't get one of the ones that like warms the water for you, which would be nice. But I do have one, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
My sister-in-law has one of the like angry Japanese toilets. Yeah,
I want one of those.
Like the lid opens up when you walk into the bathroom. It's crazy. So
there's a whole episode of Bob's Burgers about the kid becoming best friends with a toilet.
What I have to, oh gosh, I guess I can concede. I will admit this on your channel if at least somebody of the 200 folks will dig deep and make another like $2 or $5 contribution. Put in a couple more here. So one of the writers on Bob's Burgers is a show patron, right? Like they reached out, and I have to concede I have never seen the show, so I don't watch a lot of TV, and you know my lack of pop culture is pretty well established. But I feel super guilty about that because that's like, you know, they support my work and I haven't watched theirs. So I confess something to you people. You should reward the charity.
Reward the confession.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. it's a fun little show. It's like it's not something that I would sit down and like binge by itself, but it's like, oh, I've got like 20 minutes that I'm folding laundry. What do I want to put on while I'm folding laundry? It's that kind of show. It's fun.
All right. Well, I have long said I need to go check it out, but alas, I have not, and that failed to produce anyone. But hopefully, I don't know. Maybe you'll get a better guess next week. But we did with our matching. We did 1/4 of the goal in
absolutely
1/4 of the weeks. So I would say the onus is on whoever comes next to come to the party and beat that. So.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. You are a delightful guest. I wasn't expecting you to turn up with 4 pages of notes.
Really? You listen to my show. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you made this really easy on me. So,
I have to say, and again, I said this to you off the air. You know, we got to hang out in Toronto, and that was super fun. I love your channel. I really appreciate the sort of opening arguments level of humor throughout, but dedication and quality of research. There's a lot of atheist
when you say dedication, are you
there.
Thinking of the time I punched myself in the dick?
That is also commitment to a bit, and fits within there. But no, like seriously, you do, if to the extent that we have folks here who have come over from my social media and do not enjoy your content because they haven't seen it. Like you will. It's really, really good stuff. It's well researched. It's well thought out, and keep doing the Lord's work, so to speak.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Links to opening arguments and cleanup on aisle 45 are both in the description. Also, don't forget to head over to vicerhino.com/donate to donate to Project Share Niagara. I saw someone just arrived late and they're not sure what it's about. If you go to the website, it's got a little blurb about what they do, and that's what I'm raising money for this year. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me.